Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Good morning, my friends and elite achievers. Isn't today a great day? Are you up? Are you ready? Are you taking the stairs two at a time and bouncing on the balls of your feet? Today is a great day. And today I want to talk about community. No, I don't necessarily mean your local geographic community, although I could. I'm referring to the people you surround yourself with every day. As Jim Rohn famously taught, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. For many of us, that is a combination of our family and our coworkers or employees. Unfortunately, you may spend more time with your work team than you do with your family team, which is a discussion for another day. Community is important. I want you to know that you are part of my community, and I look forward to sharing this 30 to 40 minutes every week with you. And because community is so important, I brought on an Amazon #1 best-selling author who knows a thing or two about this topic. Howard Partridge is an international business coach and an in-demand speaker. He grew up on welfare, started his first business out of the trunk of his car, and then grew it into a multi-million-dollar turnkey business. Since then, he has owned 9 small businesses and recently wrote the new book, The Power of Community: How Phenomenal Leaders Inspire Their Teams, Wow Their Customers, and Make Bigger Profits. I invited him to teach us the tools of connection. Howard, it's so great to have you with us today. Welcome to Modern Leadership.
Thank you, Jake. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to talk to you. You said you were in a hotel room somewhere. Where are you at today?
I am in Dallas, Texas. I run the Zig Ziglar Legacy Certification Program, and we have our 17th class going on right now at Ziglar. We're on day number 3 of 5, and so I'm going to be heading over there to teach after a while. But so I'm here in Dallas at the famous Zig Ziglar headquarters.
Wow, what an incredible, I didn't know this about you. And this could take us on a whole other direction of the podcast, Howard, because when I got my start at 8 years old, and I tell people, I started my business at 8 years old listening to Zig Ziglar cassette tapes in the car with my dad. I saw him live for the first time at age 12. I saw him the last year of his life. He has meant a lot to me. And so to hear that from you just makes this podcast, this episode, even more exciting for me to jump in and talk to you about that. Now, how long have you been involved with the Ziglar Corporation?
Well, I invited Zig Ziglar to speak at my conference in 2008 and got to know the family and team, and in 2012 became the exclusive small business coach for Ziglar. Tom Ziglar and I have traveled the world, all over the world, teaching small business owners. And then last year, they asked me to become an executive vice president and the director of their training operations, which includes their Ziglar Legacy Certification Program. So about since 2008, really been involved with the family. I also had the honor of helping Tom Ziglar with the last chapter of Zig Ziglar's very last book. It's called Born to Win, and that chapter is called Born to Win for Business Leaders.
Well, so what you're trying to tell me then, Howard, is you're living my dream.
I am living a lot of people's dreams right now, yes, including my own.
That's incredible. Well, we didn't jump on the podcast to talk about Zig Ziglar, although we could. I want to talk about Howard Partridge, and I want to go back to this beginning with you and how you started this first small business out of the trunk of your car. As you mentioned in the intro, hey, look, I started out on welfare, and then I grew into this multi-million-dollar business. How did you do that? What was the business, and what did it take to get there?
Well, so as you mentioned, I grew up poor, and at age 18 got kicked out of the house, moved to Houston, Texas on a Greyhound bus to live with my stepdad, my real dad, who I got kicked out of the house by my stepdad. And I went to live with my real dad that I only met twice in my whole life, arrived there with 25 cents in my pocket, became a waiter, and then I met my future wife, Denise. And I went to New Jersey, where she was from, to get married. And when I was getting married, there was a friend of the family, same age as me, 23. He was tolling around a little red Mercedes convertible. I thought, I want to know what this guy does. I want to know if it's legal. And So turns out he had his own business, and we started our first business. I started that first business out of the trunk of my car with our wedding money, $3,000. And over the next 13 years, I really kind of struggled. I made good money, but I worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then I read a book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth Revisited, and learned that the one and only reason your business exists is to be a vehicle to help you achieve your life goals. And I got the vision of having a turnkey business. So I transformed that business into a turnkey operation, and then began to coach small business owners about 20 years ago. Became good friends with Michael Gerber and John Maxwell and Zig Ziglar and some of the greats. We just had Brian Tracy at our conference back in May. And so some of the greatest speakers and trainers of our time I've become friends with, and they've graced my stage. And so really what I learned is that, first of all, you got to understand why you're in business. Second, you got to have systems in your business. And then I learned about leadership and the power of the team and the power of community and the power of the group of people around you, like you were sharing in the intro. Now, I have 7 books. This is my 7th published book, but this is the most important one because the power of community is really how you experience phenomenal success in life and business.
Well, and let's take you back to that very first business, and you're talking about $3,000 in the trunk of your car. You're just married, and it started kind of with community, if you will. You had a friend, you saw what he was doing, you wondered if it was legal, and you started the business. How did your wife or future wife at that point, when you said, hey, look, I want to take our wedding money and I want to put it on red and I want to spin the wheel and see what happens?
She was not very thrilled, let me tell you. You're going to do what? I said, I'm going to do what Billy's doing. I'm going to start a business. Okay.
So you have this idea. Were you entrepreneurial to begin with, or was this something that just ignited at that moment when you saw what your friend was doing?
Well, I've always been entrepreneurial. In fact, even growing up in Alabama, even though we were poor, I always, did cut grass, and I picked up pine cones and did whatever I could to make money. I sold flower seeds door to door. There was, always get these magazines, and there was this mail order program, business opportunity. So when I was a waiter, I always wanted to have my own business. I just didn't have an idea, and I didn't have any money to speak of. I made enough money really just to pay the rent. And but speaking of my real father and my stepmother, they had an interior design business, and my wife was very successful in, not super successful at that time, but she had a lot of friends, and she's a legend in radio sales now. She just retired last year, but she had a lot of friends, and so I started building that business really just through referrals, and that's one aspect of building community, is having the support around you to do the things that you need to do. So many times today, both in marketing and in running our businesses, we're trying to do things with strangers. We're trying to attract strangers when really what it's all about, all of business and all of life, is about relationships. And so they began to refer me, and I developed some referral marketing strategies and just took what was happening naturally. I always had great customer service. And I built a referral system that very few small business owners on the planet even really know about, and much less practice. And so I just kept building referral sources and building a sense of community inside my company and around me. Every single person on the planet needs to support the encouragement and the accountability that comes from people wiser than themselves.
Well, and we started this podcast with my quote from Jim Rohn about being the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it sounds like throughout your life and your career, you've spent time with some great people. I mean, the names that you've been talking about are legends in the personal development, accountability, and leadership genres. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall for some of those conversations. But one of the things you talked about, one of the things you said is the importance of community and building relationships, and that is kind of the foundation of building a business. And I wanted to ask you about the current environment of relationship building. And it seems like with all this social media, with the world becoming flatter and our ability to communicate across all these lines, sometimes I get the feeling that relationships are less deep as they used to be. They're more surface relationships. And do you see that in your work?
It's absolutely true. And I'm actually, even though I've wanted to write this book for a long time, I'm thankful that I wrote it now, because we're really at a point right now in our society that everyone feels that. In fact, the way that I open my book, The Power of Community, is that every human being has a longing for belonging. We all want to feel loved, accepted, and validated. We want to feel that our lives matter. And deep down, we want to belong to something bigger than ourselves. We want to make a positive difference. Today, we're more connected digitally than ever before, yet we often feel more isolated and disconnected personally than ever. Social media gives us this sense of connectedness, and there's many things I love about it. I mean, what we're doing right now, we're doing a podcast where millions of people around the world can just click a button. I just signed up for a class online, and there's so many powerful things about social media, but it gives us this sense of connectedness, but a virtual community is an oxymoron. We're built, we're designed, we need people around us that care about us, and here we are more connected to the world is more connected than ever before. Yet our child suicides have doubled in the past decade, according to the Wall Street Journal, and the biggest group is teenage girls, because of what they see on their screens. I could never match up to that, and so it gives us a sense of connection, but not a sense of true community. And everyone has that longing for belonging. What does my life really mean? You know, who am I? Where do I fit in? And it causes a lot of problems because we're out of balance when it comes to that. Recently I took a 4-day digital fast. Talk about being freed up, because I realized I was addicted to my phone. So what happens in a workplace is that sense of isolation. You mentioned in the intro, we spend so much time at work, and many times in corporate America, we're working next to people we don't even like, and we can't stand going to work every day. In fact, the ongoing Gallup poll, employee engagement poll, reveals that 70% of American workers are disengaged. 18% are actively disengaged, which means that they're working against the success of the organization.
Yeah, they're sabotaging the results.
Absolutely. And the first thing that they do when they get off work is they get on with their best friend and talk about how much they hate their boss and how much they hate their work. And what a way to live, right? So this book is really for leaders and managers to turn that engagement around and have the ultimate 100% off the charts engagement. That's the ultimate dream, of course, but there's a process to go through to start turning that around. And that's what I share in the book. Is I share 3 keys to building a sense of community in your business or in your organization, and 6 steps to get you there.
Well, and one of the things that you do through this book is you give us hope. I mean, when you hear those statistics, and those aren't new to anybody on this audience. Everybody has heard these disengagement statistics. But what you're giving us is hope. We can re-engage our community, our coworkers, our teams, and get them going in the right direction. And so you talk about the 3 keys that unlock true community, and then you walk through a 6-step process that is really how you can build this community within your work. And because of the time limit on the podcast, we can only really dive into one of those. But before we do, why don't we walk through just briefly what the 6 steps are to building this community?
You bet. So there's 3 keys. The first one is support. When you support the people on your team, help them reach their personal and professional goals. And Zig Ziglar said you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what it is that they want. And there are two keys or two steps under that key. The first one is phenomenal leaders value others. One of the things I learned from John Maxwell, I was mentored by him for several years, that when you don't value others, you devalue them. So it starts with how you see human beings and how you value community. So step one is value true community. Phenomenal leaders value others. Secondly is pursue champion connections. Phenomenal leaders serve others. It's called servant leadership. And you need to build connections outside your organization to support you. And you do that by supporting them. That's how I got to have a relationship with Ziglar and Maxwell and Gerber and Tracy and all those guys. And then the second key is encouragement. And there are two keys under that. Encouragement is helping people do the things that they're maybe afraid to do. They're afraid to write that book, afraid to go on that diet. They're afraid to step up to that promotion. They're afraid to have that difficult conversation. So the two steps under that is inspire emotional trust, because phenomenal leaders care for others. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care about them. Number 4 is practice gift exchange. Phenomenal leaders develop others. Everyone has a gift. And in this chapter in the book, I talk about several programs that you can help your team discover their gifts and their talents and their strengths. That helps you get them in the right place, but it also creates this incredible sense of encouragement when I know what my personality type is, I know what my strengths are. Most people aren't aware enough to understand that. When you deliver that to your team, it's like, wow, they are so bought into you. And then the third key is accountability, and phenomenal leaders invite what I call open-hearted encounters. Phenomenal leaders, not just average leaders or managers, but phenomenal leaders love other people. Now, love is a commitment. I'm committed to you. I want to help you. I want you to be successful. Accountability is not just did you do your job and trying to force people to do things through intimidation without any kind of relationship. The Leadership Challenge series shows us that leadership is a relationship. All of business and all of life is about relationships. So we have to learn how to communicate. Phenomenal leaders effectively communicate their vision, and the vision might be clear to the leader, but have you effectively communicated? And that's really what community is all about. And one of the ultimate ways to do that I learned years and years ago is through using small groups, and I call them growth pods. Pods stands for Power of Discovery Systems, and phenomenal leaders coach others. And with a small group pod that is properly facilitated, you can really create this sense of being connected, create this sense of belonging, create this sense of togetherness. And it's a process, and you have to move through those 6 steps. It'll take a while to get to this last place, but you can go ahead and create those pods. In fact, I give a link in the book where people can download a leader's guide that will show them exactly how to do these growth pods and use the book to spread community throughout their organization. So the 6th step is phenomenal leaders coach others. A leader is a coach helping their players get from where they are to where they need to be, to help them develop their talents and their skills and their gifts, to help them to win. I am there as your coach. I'm not there to do it for you, but I'm there to support you, to encourage you, to help you develop your gifts. I'm there to coach you to phenomenal success.
And I'm going to slow you down just a little bit here, Howard, because there is so much in what you just went through that we need to unpack just a little bit of it. So you got these 6 steps, and they really fall under the 3 keys that unlock true community, which is the SEA, the support, the encourage, and the accountability. And each step, basically step 1 and 2 fall under support. Step 3 and 4 fall under encouragement, and step 5 and 6 under accountability. But there's one theme that I'm sure you know about that that was underneath all of these as you talked about it, and that was servant leadership, service, and really not just what you can get from your team, but what you can give to your team. And through every step that you talked about, your comments back to us were how you're regifting or you're gifting to your team, you're supporting them, you're serving them, you're a participant in this. And I wanted to make sure that we pulled that out and unpacked it just a little bit so that the listeners didn't just gloss over this, that this is really about the Zig Ziglar mantra of you can have everything if you help enough other people. And so we get to this step 6 where you were talking about these pods, and this is the power of discovery systems. And I want to talk about this power of discovery systems a little bit with you, Howard. What gave you the idea to come up with this pods? What is this power of discovery systems?
You bet. So let me just touch very quickly on what you just said. That is the key. That's where it starts, is to look at yourself differently as a leader and to start looking at your people differently. Most leaders and managers come in, you have this skill, do the job, and it's basically what I call observational management or judgmental management. Oh, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. No. Leadership is you are leading, you are coaching, you are helping, you are serving. And if you want better engagement, if you want better team members, if you want them to wow your customers, which will then help you make bigger profits, then you, as the leader, have to step up and lead. And you lead by serving, by caring, by developing, by loving. And that relationship moves into this welcomed accountability. Yeah, I want to be the best version of myself. Yes, I want to help the team win. Yes, I want everybody to win. Yes, I want to be engaged. Now, the growth pods, the way that I first came across this, I created the word pods in this particular case, but I came across small groups, and really the way that I discovered this idea of community to start with is it was at church. I would go to church every Sunday, and the message was good, but, it's one person speaking to many, and that's helpful and inspiring people and igniting the passion and teaching and instructing and all those kinds of things. But I didn't see really a big change, and I didn't see a lot of people really connecting with each other. But then Tuesday night, we had home group. And this is where one had a song, one had a word, one was sharing, and we were collecting money for someone who needed to fix her car. Someone was babysitting my son in the next room. Real community, real relationships were happening. And then I began to work with some guys who were doing cell group churches all over the world. And I was mentored by those guys, Dr. Ralph Neighbor Jr. and Bill Beckham that I mentioned in the book. And I decided to use the pods in my coaching and in my company. And what happens is, in a typical meeting, what happens is whoever's leading the meeting, who probably isn't comfortable speaking publicly anyway, stands up and tries to give some kind of a message, and everybody's sitting there kind of rolling their eyes, or maybe they're on their phone and they're not really engaged. And then the real meeting happens by the water cooler afterwards. What was the real meaning of that meeting? That's where the real meeting happens. The real meeting happens after the meeting. So what happens is when you do a growth pod where you're in a circle and there's a facilitator rather than a teacher, and you use my 5 eyes that I line out in the book, you can bring information out, and it is discussed in a certain format where people discover it. So when people discover a truth or a piece of information on their own, they tend to own it. Today's culture is really, you're not the boss of me. You might make my paycheck. You might pay me, but you're not the boss of me. And people really grow. This is why I call them growth pods, is because they discover it on their own. No one's telling them what to do, but we're sharing the information, and we have open-ended questions about what the information means. And so one of the things that I did in my leader's guide is I created a pod around each chapter of this book. So we can go into that chapter and we have an icebreaker. And then there's a little, they read a passage of the book together. And then there's 3 open-ended questions. So, what does this idea of community really mean to you? And anybody can share. They don't have to share. And then we can have another question that says, how could our company really benefit from, more engagement and things like that. They're not yes or no questions. We're not just telling you what to do. Okay, everybody got it. See ya. There's a conversation that's happening. And then a sense of relationship builds through these small groups, a sense of it's not that person against me and me against them. And we're together and we're discussing this together. Everybody's in a circle. Everybody's in the same has the same position because everyone in the company, everyone in the organization is a leader.
And I think that's the importance of what you're talking about with this discovery. I love the word discovery, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we live in a culture now where everybody wants to find out for themselves or where they don't want to be told, they want to discover. And I love this concept of working together. I think sometimes we try to force it, where we call a group meeting and we put them in there and we bring in an expert and they stand in front of the group and they pontificate for 45 minutes and we hope that people are taking notes and not checking their cell phone. And what we're really missing is this water cooler conversation or these small group or these non-structured meetings that have free flow of ideas that allow people to discover for themselves. If you look at just this podcast, you and I, before we jumped on a couple minutes ago, we didn't know each other. We knew about each other, but this is our first time connecting. And if we would have structured and just walked through the rote questions that I had written down, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. But by allowing the conversation to evolve, to discover about your background with the Ziglar Corporation, we've allowed this conversation to really grow. And I think it's more meaningful for you and I, more meaningful for the listeners, because we're building community right here as we speak.
Yeah, you bet. There's no question about it. And, the thing is that when I talk about phenomenal leaders love others, invite open-hearted encounters, and build growth pods, the two steps that are underneath accountability, my definition of accountability is helping others become the best version of themselves. That's where coaching comes in. Coaching requires feedback, right? So instead of just telling someone, we're talking about a subject, we're going over something, and then we're getting feedback. We need what would happen to a leader and their organization, their vision, if right then and there you could get feedback from your team about how they felt about it, how they're buying into it. It's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Howard, this has been a tremendous conversation, and I wish we could keep going and go deeper, but some of our listeners need to get into work, and they're sitting in the car getting to the end of this episode. And so before I let you go, have a couple of quick questions, put a little personal with this business conversation in a section I call Learning from Leaders. How does that sound?
You bet.
Okay, so you have talked to some of the great ones. You have read probably thousands and thousands of books, and I want to get from you a recommendation of the book you gift most often to your friends.
The book that, it depends on what they need, but you can't go wrong with See You at the Top and the reason by Zig Ziglar. And the reason is that Zig Ziglar said that most people suffer from a poor self-image, and the remedy for a poor self-image is unconditional love. So See You at the Top would definitely be one of those that would be right there at the top.
Absolutely. And I have my copy signed by Mr. Ziglar himself. It's a tremendous book. How about your leadership superpower?
It's community. It is definitely community. In fact, I have a coaching organization, and as we have built that over the last 20 years, there's plenty of people who do marketing stuff, finance stuff, digital stuff. There's all kinds of experts out there. And as we more and more people came to our conferences and joined our membership, it's a membership for small business owners. They were like, we talked about community, but we finally realized that was our superpower. That our superpower, my superpower is not me. My superpower is the people in our community, the other experts, the other business owners, the other people that are there to support, encourage, and hold one another accountable. That's what's happening in the room over here at Ziglar headquarters right now. Is there's a group of people that are building this sense of community over a week and having a life-changing experience together. They're going to belong to one another for the rest of their lives. So the greatest life lesson that I could share with the audience that has been helpful to me is get around people who are already where you want to be. If you want to be healthier, get around someone who's healthy and knows how to help you be healthy. If you want to be more financially successful, get around people who are financially successful and that know how to coach you to be financially successful. If you want to have a successful business, you want to be a successful speaker, you want to be a successful digital marketer, get around other people that are already doing what you want to do and they're already where you want to be, and serve them, encourage them, and get into their community so that they will help you. Because you really and truly, absolutely, 100% can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what it is that they want.
Well, and I think we're going to close with that, Howard. That is a tremendous synopsis of everything that you have talked about today on this episode. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Before we let you go, how can we find out more about you? How can we pick up a copy of this tremendous book to build community?
Just go to howardpartridge.com or just search my name on the web, and you'll probably find out more than you want to know.
We're going to link it up on the show notes so they won't have to search too far. They'll just go to the show notes, click on your name, and boom, they'll be right there. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day. You have an inspiring day ahead of you, and I bet you it's really exciting. I wish I was there by your side, but for this moment, we will let you go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jake. Well, I'd like to invite you and everybody else listening, just come on down here to Dallas, to Ziglar headquarters. Would love to have you here.
Okay, next flight. I'm over there. Unplanned and unscripted. I had no idea that Howard Partridge had such involvement with the Ziglar Corporation, but you could see it come out in everything that he talked about. The philosophy, the lifestyle, the culture, the community. I just love this conversation with Howard. Can't thank him enough again for coming on the show and bringing the wisdom. I agree with him. Community is so vitally important. As I look at the successes that I've had, which I hope are only minor successes compared to what's coming in the future, I have to say that community has meant the difference in what I've been able to accomplish and where I've been able to go. And not just what I've been able to accomplish, but the enjoyment along the ride. We talk about success being a journey. I've enjoyed this journey because of the people that have been on this journey with me. A couple of things that I wanted to point out from the show. Accountability is helping others be the best version of themselves. I love that idea. Accountability isn't about being a taskmaster. It's not about being a micromanager. It's about visualizing the success that an individual can have and holding them to what they can be, the best that they can be. The other thing that I wanted to point out from this episode is you become part of what you're around. Howard closed by talking about the importance of surrounding yourself with good people, with people who can take you to the next level. Truly, 1 + 1 does not equal 2 when it comes to community. When you surround yourself with good people, 1 + 1 will always be more than 2. Of course, everything that we talked about on this episode of the podcast can be found over on the show notes for this episode, jakeacarlson.com/ML65 for episode 65. And until we catch up again next week, I want to thank you for being a part of the Modern Leadership community. I want to wish you a very good day, an even better life. And of course, I want you to stay awesome. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.